Hello everyone, Kurt over here and welcome back to another episode from Hope Fighter Labs. Today we continue on with Fiore's Axe Posta and we are continuing into the Posta di Vera Croce variant in which Fiore shows us to hold the axe. Now, not dissimilar to what we've seen before in regards to the sword section here. There is some, you can look at some of the pictures right here as far as the minor changes of the hands, but the end state of right here, regardless of it, is once again we're looking at the striking side of the weapon being away from us and going into crossing to create certain actions. We're going to be talking about those movements right here and some of the basic foundational concepts and other things that might be considered in this in a moment here. But before we do, if you're new to the channel, please like, subscribe, share with a friend out there, and leave a comment below about what your experience with this video is or in previous ones. If you're a regular member here, thank you so much for all the time that you've put into comments and being a part of this and watching. Your subscription means a lot to me, and I appreciate you joining me in this 14th century journey of Fiore's Armazzari. With that being the case here, everybody, before I get yammering too much here, let's take a look at the Azza Posta di Vera Croce, and see the commonalities and factors in which make it unique. So continuing on with the positions, we also have the Posta di Vera Croce. And this is not dissimilar to the Posta di Croce di Bastarde and the Vera Croce that we saw with the armored sword section. You can tell here by looking at the image that it is essentially the same position. The thing right here is that essentially in this right here, instead of having, like in the Posta Breve la Serpentina, instead of being with the axe head forward, I now have this portion forward right here. So ultimately right here, as he said with all of Armazzari, the art is in the crossing. And that's a deeper thing right there that I don't think is just the axe or armor. It's the fact that in the art of arms, the important thing to remember is that you must cross, and we're going to work out of crossing here to go against something. That doesn't mean that you can avoid, that you can't avoid or do other things right here. It just tells me perhaps that Fiore's a little bit more prudent in the fact that he would rather cross with somebody, because from there at least you've got contact and you're not gaming with a response. You are striking to a covering mechanism and then working from there. But enough of this right here, because we're going to start talking about the Vera Croce of the axe. And the big thing about this right here is that essentially, again, depending on how you see the grips, it could be both hands are over, as certainly is depicted, but I also see that I could be right here as well. The point right here for this right here is, again, I have thrust with this lower portion right here, so the rules still apply to me in the fashion of what we saw with Posta Breve, so I can still thrust and hit against somebody utilizing the butt end of the axe. The thing is, though, with that, we don't know necessarily. It could be just like the one that I have from Arms and Armor, where it's just the end of a wooden shaft. It could be that it is something that's got a spike or a pedale on the end. So whether this actually goes through armor or causes anything other than devastating here, other than percussive actions, is dependent upon the actual weapon itself. And a part of the reason why I don't think Fiore says, that about piercing and whatnot. Instead, what he talks about how is it does the first concept of the sword and armor. And that right there, once again, it shows how the commonality feature when it comes under armor or Armazzari concept in general is to move, block, strike, essentially. To cross and move and then strike. So from this right here, it's no different from what we saw within the sword and when we had before. I'm using the Vera Croce grip, where we came across here, up, turn through, up, and then thrust. Well, in this right here, it's the same thing. From this position, I can easily crest into a blow. I can also decide to turn into the blow and thrust here, because all I'm talking about is increasing offline. So coming over, turn through, and once again, we see how this is the part right here. And he's reserved this in many ways, because essentially, if I've jabbed and then cross, well, the lessons we saw with Posta Breve la Serpentina are still applicable when it comes down to the point of the axe. So again, not complicated as far as anything else is concerned when it comes down to other concepts and considerations of the axe. But the point right here is that we start to see a commonality feature between the two applications of the axe, which are talking about the concept of striking to and through and being able to deflect and then reserving that powerful portion right here of the axe head. That's going to be a very important piece here when we start talking later on, because I believe that this right here is the target of contending with this device, not unlike what we see with the dagger in other concepts right here, as far as the first crossing of the axe. But we'll get to that in future videos. So as you can see with the video, again, like I said, the parts about this that are fascinating to me is that this position itself it's the same kind of concept and structure that you see within the sword section as far as the Vera Croce. And later on when we see the lanza, we'll see another similar concept right here. But the reality is, one commonality between all of them is that the point is offline and behind them that they intend to strike with. Now, of course, with the pommel, I can still strike with the pommel of a sword. I can strike with the pedale of the Azza or the lanza, depending on what I have in hand here. But the main striking device is in reserve. The part that I think is interesting about this is the nature in which Fiore has the axe. His grip is backwards. So in this case right here, it's almost like he's expecting to hammer down with this so that we can strike in a way that allows for a much more reinforced strike against somebody. Does this add to the concept of how the axe can break through armor, but whether it be the placards or the breastplate? I don't know. But I'm willing to bet that, again, whether this is the exact image in how to hold the axe or not, the point being here is the weight of the axe is the thing that is assisting in punching through with that spike or dagger, whatever you want to call it, at the top of the cross. Once again, we see commonality here in regards to how the position of this axe position here allows us to roll and move. So move, block, strike, essentially, move, cross, strike is essentially what he is providing for us to do in the practice of Armitsari. And for everything else that goes out there, because the reality is this kind of circular motion allows for redirection of blows that would be very devastating to receive if not properly managed. Now, the thing that makes this unique to me as compared to the other two Vera Croce is mostly the grip, but also, again, how we see here the weight distribution of the weapon. With a sword, the weight is in the handle and the pommel. In the Vera Croce, in Posta di Vera Croce for the sword, that weight is in my lead hand, which is, in this case, the right hand. However, in the axe, it's the opposite. And in this case right here, we see that the axe is behind us, which would be the weightier form of it. The lance, it's probably estimated that the weight of the tip is actually light too as well, depending on how much you have on the other end. But again, we see here with the axe, the grip is different, and that could just be artist rendition, but it could also be a tactical concept right here in which Fiore grabs differently on this to really add that punching that's available to us with the axe. And that right there is some of the things right here that I see within the Posta di Vera Croce for the Azza, which I think make it a very unique concept right here, because in so many times that we see this, Fiore already is talking about how to hook and everything else with the sword, which you can do with the axe. The difference right here is that you don't necessarily have something that you're worried about cutting yourself with. You do have something up here that you're worried about that could maybe hit you in the face or cause more damage to you in different directions. And he chooses to keep that weight behind him to allow to pressure on through. So that's going to do it for this video right here. I'm very curious to see what your thoughts are in regards to Posta di Vera Croce for the Azza. Do you use it in combat? Do you try this in the list? Have you ever had experience being able to go back and forth with this? Have you noticed the difference in grips that Fiore offers right here as far as the image goes? And have you played with that? I'm curious to hear what you have to say out there. And please leave a comment below there to let us know about that. But until I see everybody out there, please stay safe out there, train well, and fight on. I'll see you all soon.